Hello and welcome to today's Valto webinar titled The AI-Enabled Employee. My name is Dougie Wood and I'm a Microsoft MVP. I've been a solution architect for the past 10 years building out bespoke solutions using Microsoft tech. I'm also joined today by the CEO of Valto, who's going to be walking us through some of the case studies and some of the solutions that we've been building with AI for our customers recently. Now, before we jump into the presentations, I just want to share with you the Valto's new mission statement, which is Valto builds the intelligent workplace of the future using Microsoft AI. Microsoft AI is going to be riddled in every single element and aspect of Microsoft, and it's really time to upskill and get ready for using AI. Today's agenda looks a little bit like this. First off, we're going to be defining the AI-enabled employee, what goes into it and what are the benefits of it. We're then going to look at some of the AI toolkits. I'm going to be sharing with you my kind of top 3 tools that I'm using at the moment to boost productivity and help with my day-to-day work life using Microsoft AI. This touches on things like Power Automate AI, as well as SharePoint agents, and also Copilot for Microsoft 365 across Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and so much more. We're also going to be looking at the personas of AI, basically our AI-enabled team. Who are they? What are the types of roles and what are the types of things that they're doing using AI to benefit their day-to-day work practices? We're also going to talk about how you can get started, so what you need to be thinking about to get the ball rolling, and we even have a free download below, which is an AI readiness assessment, which basically allows you to kind of go for a checklist and make sure that you're thinking about everything that you should be to avoid any common mistakes we're seeing before people are rolling out AI to their organization. Of course, as ever, if you need some help with AI, you can book a free 1-hour consultation using the link in the description below. But now I'm going to hand over to Hugh, who's going to walk us through the AI-enabled employee.
Hi everyone. I want to talk today about how AI-enabled employees are going to reshape the way we work, and not in 5 years' time, we're talking months. So let's get one thing straight. AI is here to support human capability, not replace it. We're not heading into a future where people are sidelined by machines. We're heading into one where people are amplified by them. Here's what that means in practice. Less admin, more creativity. Right now, far too many talented people are bogged down with repetitive admin tasks. AI can automate the mundane, like writing reports, formatting documents, chasing updates, freeing up time for the kind of work humans do best, thinking creatively, solving problems, and building relationships. Number 2, fewer silos, faster decisions. AI helps us connect the dots across departments and data silos. Imagine having a single assistant that pulls insights from sales, ops, and finance instantly. No more waiting on emails, chasing for Teams messages, looking at dashboards, or playing Chinese whispers between teams. Decisions become faster, execution becomes sharper. Number 3, less time searching, more time doing. If you've ever wasted 20 minutes trying to find one file, you're going to love this. Copilot changes the game. You can now ask your system for the answer, summarize last week's meeting, or find me this document, and it just appears. No scrolling, no clicking around, just answers. So what does this all mean? It means that the future of work isn't about replacing people with AI. It's about unlocking the full potential of your people, making work faster, smarter, and more human. If you're not preparing your team for this shift, you're already behind. The workplace is changing, and it's happening sooner than you think.
I want to show you the top 3 Microsoft AI tools that I'm currently using to help improve productivity in my day-to-day work life. The first is going to be using Power Automate AI features such as sentiment analysis to determine the sentiment of emails that we receive. Then I'm going to be talking a lot about SharePoint agents and showing you how it can boost things like employee onboarding, sales materials, and so much more. Then I'm going to show you our Copilot demonstration of how we're using Copilot throughout Outlook, Word, Excel, and even PowerPoint. So stick with us and I'm going to show you how you can use Microsoft AI to boost your productivity. So the first tool that I'm going to be talking about is the AI sentiment analysis that's available inside of Power Automate. Now, this is a real world use case that I've mocked together a bit of a proof of concept just to be able to show you. Now, in this scenario, what we built was a tool which was taking inbound emails and then determining their email sentiment, whether they were very positive or whether they were very negative, and it can even give you a percentage score of how positive, how negative that it believes that that email was. We can then basically have certain automated actions which come off the back of it. So if it was very negative, it might be that we choose that we want to escalate this, class as a P1 support ticket. If it was something that was very positive, maybe it gets automatically emailed to our marketing team because there might be a case study or a testimonial that might come off the back of it. Of course, this logic could be used for all sorts of different types of sentiment analysis. We've seen it in the past before for doing things like scraping social media, like Facebook or X, to get company information. So in terms of where somebody has been, say, tagged a social media post with a company name, we can scrape that information and then use our AI sentiment analysis to determine whether it's positive or negative, and even maybe automatically respond. So if it was, for example, very positive, we could say, hey, great, this is fantastic news, thank you very much. If it was very negative, again, maybe we then create a support ticket internally and then get someone from the customer success team to follow up with it. In this scenario, you can see I have this deployed to my own kind of test mailbox, and I've got an email that's come in here to say your product is terrible, it broke instantly, and I want my money back right now. Obviously, very negative, and we need to action this straight away. So what we then end up with is a workflow which gets triggered in the background. So in Power Automate, we have a workflow which is called Notify Me on Teams when I receive an email with negative sentiment. You can see that this has been triggered, and I can go into the actual case itself, and I can see within here, this is the workflow. This is actually the steps that it follows. So without getting too boring and technical, I'll just give you a high level. The email comes in, and we can specify this to be a specific mailbox, even a shared mailbox, or even a folder within a mailbox. It will then get the email and pass it through to the analyze positive or negative sentiment in your text, which is an AI feature of Power Automate. It will then output what it believes as a set of parameters, a set of variables essentially, and it will then get my profile. So in this case, what we're doing is we're sending a Teams message, but equally it could easily just be a email which gets sent somewhere, for example, or maybe rather than being a Teams chat message, it could be posted into a Teams channel or thread. There's so many different options here. Now, the conditional here basically is if it's negative sentiment, then send me a message inside of Teams to let me know so I can follow up with it. We don't actually have something here on the other side, which in this case would be if it was positive. But of course, you can see we can easily build that out. So if it was positive, maybe it goes down a totally different route. We then have our ability to have the Teams message, which comes through. Now, the Teams message would look something along the lines of this. So you can see here saying, hey, Dougie, you received an email from, and this is obviously just my test email address, with a negative sentiment. Here's a snippet. Your product is terrible, blah, 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 and then message what it comes through from. So that's the email message that's sent to me. So I can see the full details. Of course, I could give more details like this if I wanted to. So I say the email address where it comes from, maybe any other information that we've got on it. We've done things in the past before where we've looked up based on the email address whether we've got any of the customer details on record already. So maybe we could pair it to a recent order or an invoice or something like that as well. We could pair it to data that we know we've got automatically in the system. Now, again, we could build on this further if we wanted to. I say there's loads of different types of AI options inside of Power Automate. So let's just take a look at some of the AI actions that we can do. So we've got things like saved AI builder feed, processing invoices, analyzing sentiment, which is what we're using here, detect objects in images. So it might be, say, for example, it doesn't have to be an email. It could be based on a document which is uploaded. There's loads of different types of triggers that it could be. It could be even integrating to a third-party app completely. But I really like this. I think detecting objects and images is fantastic because you could have a picture and then maybe it could work out what objects are in there and tag them. Processing receipts, again, really useful for kind of finance related tasks. Detecting language, predictions, and running a prompt as well. So you can see here there's loads of different things we can do to integrate AI directly into Power Automate. The next Microsoft AI tool that I want to talk about is called SharePoint Agents. Now, SharePoint Agents are essentially chatbots which are layered over the top of specific SharePoint files or folders that you've selected as its source of knowledge. Now, I'm going to show you a few different examples, starting off with this example, which is our G-Cloud agent. Now, what this is specifically is for our salespeople here at Valto. Now, our sales team answer queries that come from all sorts of different types of prospects and leads, and basically our salespeople can't be necessarily the full knowledge experts of every last intricacy of where leads are coming from. And one of those places is what we call G-Cloud, which is essentially where all of our public sector work comes from. Essentially, it's an online portal, it's a .gov portal, where all of our kind of services are listed. Now, the way that we interact is slightly different than maybe if it was a private company we're dealing with. So sometimes there's going to be questions which come up from our salespeople about how to interact when it comes to a G-Cloud transaction. Now, what we've built is this G-Cloud agent, which essentially is looking at a set of basic set of documents and files and folders which live inside of our SharePoint site, and then we have a SharePoint agent which we can easily overlay over the top of this, and basically we can access it either as a shared link, so we can access it in a browser, or you can even embed it into Microsoft Teams. Our salespeople can ask it questions, so maybe we could say, what services do we offer on G-Cloud? And this is then going to look at all of the different information that we have inside of this knowledge base, which this particular SharePoint agent is able to access. But now you can see it's come back with all this information. Now this has pulled this out of quite a few different areas, and it's combined it to say, here's all the different services. So it's broken it down by our core areas, so modern workplace and security services, cloud infrastructure services, AI and Power Platform services, SharePoint services, and our workshop specific services, as well as additional things like backup and recovery, and some additional information that might be worth noting as well about this information. So this makes it really easy for us to be able to ask questions. Our salespeople can get informed. So maybe it might be something like question like, please can you give me more info on our SharePoint intranet service that we offer on G-Cloud. So you might want to delve specifically into a service and get a little bit more information. And again, this is now sort of looking through all the information that it's had, and it's now found that we have a number of different SharePoint services, including internet design, build, and support. And you can now see it's listing out all the kind of the overview of the service, as well as any related offerings as well. And it's also referencing the files that it's found, so I can jump directly into the specific file areas as well. The other cool thing that I like about SharePoint Agents is it understands contextually what it is that you're kind of currently talking about, and it'll start giving prompts down at the bottom. We can see here specific prompts. Now this is what SharePoint Agents itself has come up with, so maybe it's break down what's in each intranet in a boxed tier, compare SharePoint intranet to other modern workplace services, list typical project steps for SharePoint intranet build. That's a really good question. It's probably a question that a salesperson might follow up and ask the SharePoint agent. So again, it's starting to understand the conversation that I'm currently having backwards and forwards with the SharePoint agent, and now it's starting to provide more questions itself. So now you can see it's breaking down, saying, okay, this is the way that we engage with our SharePoint internet projects. There's a scoping phase, there's a design phase, there's a build phase, we have content migration phases, testing, launch and adoption, and then ongoing support. So it's bob on perfect, and it's summarized very quickly the step-by-step process. So say, for example, I was a salesperson and we had a lead come through from G-Cloud, and someone was asking a question about what steps do we take to deploy our solutions. We've got literally a step-by-step guide that is provided here, nice and simple, and it's summarized exactly the types of information that we need. Some other examples of SharePoint agents. So we've also done something very similar with our policies. So we have our policies stored inside of SharePoint. And in fact, actually, we have customized SharePoint. So we have a policy management system which has all of our documents have version numbers. It has an approval status. We have a reviewer who's responsible for updating the policy, an approver, and then we have a workflow in the background essentially which makes sure that at the review date, an email sent to the reviewer to make sure that they stay up to date. By contacting the reviewer, they update the document, submit it to the approver, that gets published for approval. It documents down the approval date, and then also we have what we call our tracker group, which is essentially like a read receipt list. So it sends to specific people to get them to confirm that they've actually read that specific policy document. So we know that these policies now are all 100% up to date. They're really clean, and we're happy for all of our employees to be able to access this. Now, rather than just giving them a link to a SharePoint site with all these different files within there, we give them now a SharePoint agent where they can go and ask specific questions. So again, putting ourselves into the shoes of the employee, what are the types of questions we are most likely going to ask a policies chatbot about our day-to-day work life? Now, the other thing I should mention about SharePoint agents is you can also change the initial prompts. So the first prompts that we saw the previous agent were just the stock ones, the standard issue ones, but we can change them. So common questions that we think that potentially Valto employees would ask a policies agent might be things like, how many holidays do I get a year? What day of the month do we get paid? What is our policy on working from home? So we can select one of these, and then you can see it automatically puts into the prompt here that question, and then by posting it, it's then going to take a good look at all the policies, procedures that we have stored inside of our policy management system, and it's then going to pull out the most relevant information for us to basically answer that specific question. Of course, we can also give kind of follow-up questions as well, and also the SharePoint agent is going to come back with a few different suggestions of how we could improve the prompts that we're asking it for. So there we go. We've got the answers come back now. So it's pulled through to say, you asked about how many holidays you get per year at Valto, and then it's brought through the core information I need. So we've got 25 days paid annual leave plus 8 public holidays. That's 33 days of annual leave in total. All the relevant information that it thinks that I would also be pretty interested in is like the flexible holiday scheme. So it's pulled through information here to say that we can buy and sell up to 5 days. You must take at least 20 days of annual leave each year, regardless of buying or selling. And there's some additional notes around here about the flexi window and how you can buy and sell. Now, again, the SharePoint agent has then come up with a couple of different ideas that I might potentially want to ask as follow-up questions. How do I buy extra holidays? What's the process for selling holidays? How do I check my current holiday balance? So I might want to say, how do I buy extra holidays? So again, no one's prompted this SharePoint agent to actually give me that information. It's just come up with it itself. So here we go. You can see it's powered by Copilot, and now it's got me the answer. So it's basically telling me all about the flexi windows, how many days we can buy, the application process, how the pay is adjusted, all this kind of information, and it's all generated from documents that it's found inside of SharePoint. So it's basing all of this on what it's found inside of the flexible holiday policies, and you can see where it's referenced certain documents, we can jump directly to them from the chats that we actually have. Then the final way that you can use SharePoint agents is to basically ask questions across the whole of the SharePoint site. So in this example, we're actually looking at this as part of our onboarding process. We can potentially go to our SharePoint site and then ask specific questions. So by clicking on the Copilot button across the top, it's actually opening up Copilot in SharePoint. And you can see here, I'm on my onboarding site. So this is an onboarding site, which essentially has more information about the company, how you get started, task lists, things like that. But I might want to ask a question to the SharePoint site of information, say, what does my first week look like here at Valto? And then it's breaking it down. So based on all the information it's found, it knows that there's an onboarding journey, that it knows that there's key information and policies that I should be reading as a new starter. It knows about the kind of Valto Academy, which is a series of videos that Valto offer to onboard and basically get everyone up to speed. We have the employee benefits, which is essentially a page of information of all the different things that you can claim as an employee, and meet the leadership team. information on senior leadership, team and management, and career progression and pay scales here at Valto as well. So again, there's follow-up questions that we can pull out here, but I just wanted to show you how we can pull information directly from SharePoint using this agent model. The third Microsoft AI tool is what everyone's currently talking about, and this is Copilot for Microsoft 365. Now, I'm going to be telling you a story about how here at Valto, our consultants are using this across these key Microsoft products. Now, the story starts off inside of Outlook. Think of kind of as a consultant, most of what we do is starting off our conversations with our clients often takes place in an email. Now, I don't know about you, but I sometimes get email threads which are not just weeks, but months, maybe even years long sometimes. And essentially, this is what we're kind of starting off here with, is this very long email thread. And as a consultant, trying to figure out what it is I'm being asked to do. Essentially, what it is that a client has contacted our salesperson, Sam in this case, and has purchased a SharePoint workshop. Sam's then forwarded this email on to me asking that I book in a workshop, but I want to get the core information out of the email before I reach out to the client to book in the workshop. So rather than going through the whole email and scrolling through it, I can click on the summary by Copilot. This is now telling me that Joe Bloggs, who's the client, has reached out to Valto for assistance in building a SharePoint intranet. Sam's asked if I could basically book in the workshop with them, and there's some details in here that the client said that they're available on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and Sam's asked that I book it in to go ahead and do that. Now, before I book in the workshop, often what I will do is I'll contact the customer and I will just get a bit of information from them, maybe even book in a 15-minute call with them just to get a little bit more info from them. So I've typed in here a little bit of a prompt, say, please write a response to Joe Bloggs and ask them to book in a 15-minute consultation. You can see with Copilot also, we can change the tones of voice. We can ask it to be more direct, neutral, casual, formal, or for some reason, you can even make it a poem. You can also have the length to be shorter, medium, or long. Or if you wanted to, as part of your prompt, you could ask it to use a certain tone of voice, be funny, be casual, be very professional. You can change that as part of your prompt as well. But in this case, I can say I want it to be quite casual, I want it to be a long message, and it's going to draft up a message based on what it understands of the email context so far. And here we go, it's drafted something up, say, hey, yeah, I'll book in the workshop. How about a quick introduction call first to compare calendars and see where we can book in the actual schedule. As I say, we can always refine this by clicking on the three dots. We can always say, make this longer, make it shorter, make it more formal, or you can even free type into the prompt, say anything you'd like to change. And by selecting something, it can then automatically change and update that for you before you then send that out to the actual customer. So now we've, as part of this story, we've booked in our workshop, and our workshop is now going to take place inside of Microsoft Teams. Now with Copilot, we can actually use Copilot not just after the meeting. We're going to take a look at this later on, but actually a lot of people think that Copilot is only for kind of generating meeting actions or summary notes and things like afterwards. You can use Copilot in live time during the actual Teams meeting. So during the workshop in this case, I can actually type into Copilot certain things. Like I might type in, for example, how can I generate more ideas? So what questions could the group ask to get more ideas? So it's aware of everything we've talked about so far in the meeting, and it's aware of what we've not talked about. So as part of the SharePoint workshop, it might say, or we've not talked about actually how can we leverage SharePoint to enhance our collaboration. So maybe that's a good idea as a starting point to generate more ideas for the actual meeting. We can also use it to capture key requirements. So as a consultant, I want to know basically for each participant in the meeting, what is their biggest concern and what are they most excited about? You can see here I've also said keep it short, because sometimes with AI it can be a bit waffly even more than I'm waffling right now. So I want to keep it nice and short. So what this is doing is it's then giving me this bullet point format, and you can see as part of the meeting it knows that, for example, Hannah's concerned about the adoption and training of users, and she's most excited about seamless integration with other Microsoft products. So that's fantastic. We can use that now to be extracted out, and we can put this into our follow-up proposal, our workshop report, so we can address what people are most concerned about, and we can basically remind them about what they're most excited about, which is all increasing the chances that we are going to actually win the project off the back of this particular workshop. So now we've done our workshop, we can use things like, as I said before, Copilot inside of Teams, which knows exactly who said what and when. We can see a full kind of log of exactly what was discussed, the meeting notes and things like that. And then we can choose to copy all of that. And for example, you could paste this into OneNote, you could paste this into Loop. There's loads of places you could potentially paste this into. But if you were to put it inside of OneNote, you can also use Copilot as well. Now, this is fantastic for doing things like getting a bit of a summary. So as a consultant, it might be that I do a workshop on a Friday, but I don't actually get time to do the write-up for a few days later, so it may be mid next week. So I could come back in here and I could ask it for a bit of a summary to understand what actually this project is. I could also ask it to create things like tables. So Copilot could create a table of, say, for example, all the stakeholders from that particular workshop. And then I can paste this alongside the notes that I've been taking during the meeting, which fleshes out all of the things I'm going to need for my workshop report afterwards. Again, if I wanted to, I didn't include it in this example, but you could, for example, have that table include the stakeholder, their main objectives, what they're most concerned about, and what they're most excited about. So fantastic things to include as part of the workshop report. Now we've got all of our notes together. One of the other things that we often do during a workshop is we often take, for example, if it's a SharePoint workshop, we build what we call a site map, which is basically an Excel spreadsheet of all the different SharePoint sites we're going to create, what department they're for, who's going to own them, the security model, whether they're restricted or open, what type of site are they, communication site or team site, and so much more. This is just a proof of concept demonstration. But you can see then once I've got it into Excel, I can use Copilot to ask it to do things like visualize the amount of teams or communication sites. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm actually terrible with Microsoft Excel, and I find Copilot fantastic at doing all these things like creating visuals and charts, finding insights I just never would have found, or even writing out formulas that I didn't know how to do myself. So you can go, you can see it's now created a table, and it's got some little insights for me here. So you can see that the most team or communication sites is sales, and with 15 followed by IT with 10. So you can see here it's now put that table nicely into an Excel document for me, and we can even choose to further refine it if we wanted to as well. I could ask more questions like which content owner has the most sites. So this is really useful information. So as a consultant, I can go back to the customer to say, hey, did you know that actually Derek actually has the most SharePoint sites assigned to him? So that might not be fair. You might not necessarily have the bandwidth or time to manage that amount of SharePoint sites. So it might be an insight to know to go back to the customer and say, maybe we need to go back to the drawing board a little bit with this and make sure it's fair. And again, we can see Copilot starting to understand the information that we're providing, and it's giving us questions. So this was actually a question it thought of itself. So what is the most common restricted or open security model? And again, it's an insight as a consultant I can go back to my client with and say, did you know that most of your SharePoint sites are set to restricted? Which, and given the pros and cons, that's fine. It's going to be very secure. It's a very good security model to have it restricted. However, it is going to increase the amount of administration time it takes to add and remove people from the different SharePoint sites. So that's Copilot in Excel. Then following on from the story, we've now got all of our notes, we've got all of our information. Actually, this is just a fast track, but you could then use all of that to create your Word document. We are going to look at how we create PowerPoint from Word in a second, but as I say, you can create Word documents from your notes to get you to this stage. The bit I wanted to show you here is actually once we've got our workshop report together, one of the things which is very important as a consultant is I want to make sure that this document is as best quality as possible to give me the best chance actually the client purchasing the project off the back of this. So I want to make sure that we've got a good chance of this. Now, one thing you can do with Copilot is you can ask it to take the role of somebody. You could say, take the role of the customer receiving the SharePoint intranet proposal. Is there anything missing from it that you would influence basically to purchase the project? Now, obviously, this is just a proof of concept, the document itself, so there's probably going to be a lot of stuff that's actually missing, but hopefully this picks up on all of it. So it's now going to have a look over the document, it's combing through that, and it's comparing it against other documents that I've done in the past before. And again, this is saving time. This is saving, usually I would have a colleague do this as a kind of first draft. Now it's actually finding loads of information and saving my colleague time having to sort of proofread the document. So basically now what it's found is a series of things that it believes that if I was to action or add to the document would increase the chances of converting into a project. So if I just skim through this a little bit, it talks a lot about design and user experience. So maybe I should include a bit more about that. Maybe there's not much talking about security and compliance. Maybe that should add some information on that. There's no references or case studies included in this document currently. These are all fantastic ideas for what I could do to improve this document. Again, I could feed more information into it. I could feed those things which were what people are most excited about. Have I covered off everything which they're excited about? Here's everything that everyone said they were concerned about. Have I covered everything, or is there anything else I could do to alleviate those concerns? But again, this is all going to be impacting how the chances are converting my sort of workshop into an actual project. And then finally, as I said, those workshop documents could be massive. They could be 8,000, 10,000 words. We don't want to necessarily be going to our customers and having to give them that whole document and sit on a few hour long meeting with them to hand that over. We want to let them consume it in their own time. So instead, we want to create a pitch deck. Now, inside of PowerPoint, I could go in and I could go to Copilot and say, hey, go and create me a pitch deck from a specific document. So I can select my test workshop report here, and it will then say, okay, well, here's all the pages I'm going to create. Because I've not told it exactly what pages and slides I want it to create, it's going to be a bit sort of, well, basically, it's going to provide me more than what I need. It's going to tell me all the pages that it's going to create. I'm just going to fast forward this a little bit, and you can see now it's generating the slides, and it will actually tell you what slides it's going to create. You can see it starts to appear here before they actually get created, but then it springs into life and it's created all these slides. Now, you could do this from a branded template already if you had one, and it would basically use all the sort of templated slides and colors and things like that, or you can apply it afterwards, which we'll see. But you can see it's generated this from the workshop report. It's brought through the agenda, the attendees, the objectives. It's also brought through tables and images. And if there's no image that it's got to pull through, it will even use the PowerPoint stock image library itself. So that image there you're seeing isn't part of the Word document. It's brought it through itself. Then, as I say, if I've not used a branded document, I could always go ahead and choose to apply the brand colors and themes afterwards. And that gives me my kind of final result. As I say, I still need to edit this. There's probably a lot of slides I need to remove, but at least it's getting me that kind of 80% of the way there. And it's just a case of small tweaks and changes rather than spending hours on a pitch deck. We're now spending 10, 20 minutes on creating one. So that's Microsoft 365, the Copilot for Microsoft 365, and a short journey of how this is actually being used. Now we've seen how some of these Microsoft AI tools are being used, I'm going to hand you over to Hugh, who's going to introduce you to some personas of an AI-enabled team.
Meet Aisha, a data analyst for a manufacturing company. So Aisha has a Power BI report, which is utilizing Fabric in the back end. So Fabric is the data warehousing and data modeling tool. It's automatically connecting to the ERP systems, in this case, SAP. And we've then produced some Power BI reports that are showing the key KPI information. So as with a traditional Power BI report, I can drill into various information. I can filter and view specific pieces of KPIs. But across the top, we've implemented some AI functionality. So you can see here in this section, we have something called the Smart Narrative AI Visualization. So what this does is it looks at the data that's being presented on the screen, and over on the right-hand side, it's presenting correlations that you might not have realized yourself by looking at that data. So we can see that Jan made up 18.8% of the availability at rest. And at 38.78, Saturday had the highest downtime and was much higher than Monday, which had the lowest downtime. So these insights are fantastic at really helping present a smart narrative to the users that are looking at that data. Finally, over on the Insights tab, we have Ask a Question About Your Data section here. So as report builders and IT super users, we can build the reports how we think the end users would like to see them. However, often we don't build those reports exactly as we want the users to expect to see them. So what we're able to do here is ask a question about your data. And what it does is it allows that user to automatically ask additional questions or present additional visuals in different ways. So I can look at previous year performance percent and performance percent by week number. And this will automatically create me that weekly view based on week numbers. So this is a very powerful feature that exists within the AI toolset. And it basically means that I'm able to start presenting the data in views that I would like to see rather than how it's been built for me. Meet James. James is our sales lead, and he's using Copilot to prep for meetings in seconds. So here we have our CRM system, which is Halo, but this also works well with products like Dynamics 365. Within here, we're able to choose AI opportunity, and we can provide all of the key information about this client. What will happen is, as soon as we hit that save button, it automatically creates the relevant thread in Microsoft Teams. So now we can see here's the details of that client, the original request that was raised. What we can do now is we can tag our pre-sales agent, and we've got two options, two functions. The first one is to create an agenda. So what it'll do is it'll create a tailored agenda based on the description that we received in that meeting. And that will automatically suggest points that we should talk about. And it will be aligned to Valto's selling best practices, which is using BANT and gathering things like budget, authority, need, and timeline. So you can see this is now tailored, and it helps that James basically prep for that meeting and ask all the right questions. The second thing we have is the pre-sales agent also has the ability to create a proposal. So automatically, it will take the description of that meeting. It's going to ask us in a second for some additional information, like are there any supporting files? So I can upload RFP or tender type information. In this case, I can choose no. And what it'll do is it'll automatically then go and create that pre-sales document. So it's looking in our knowledge base, it's looking at previous projects that we've completed, it's looking at how long it typically takes us to do tasks, and that's automatically then producing us a proposal document. And I'll go and show on from earlier because it can take a little while to send that over. But if I jump into this, you'll see that the Word document has been created. It's opened in Valto's standard template, and it's automatically brought through things like technologies that would be used. It's created our workshop pricing. It's given us timelines. It's automatically created some MVP standard and premium options. And then finally, it's built the licensing. So this process saves James hundreds of hours every month from creating proposals and preparing for meetings. Meet Sarah. Sarah's our HR manager, and she's cut onboarding prep down from 6 hours to 45 minutes. So we start with our onboarding system. So this is built in SharePoint, which is foundational for the knowledge of Copilot. We have a number of different modules, but within here we can see the onboarding module. So this is designed as a new starter. When they come into this platform, they've got everything they need to get started. You can see the story, they can see a message from the CEO, they've got useful information around one-to-ones. Further down, we can also see we've got some critical information like travel expenses and how to get paid. We've also got a number of videos. And then finally, which is the key, we also give a number of tasks to every new starter. So it's things like provide the bank details, look at equal opportunities, provide introductions, email signatures. So our SharePoint onboarding systems have been around for a very long time. However, using AI and the way that the majority of the time is being saved is now we are able to automate creation of contracts. So that basically means as soon as we have a new starter, the contract's generated for them straight away. We're automating tasks automatically using Copilot Studio, and we're provisioning accounts and relevant access to different systems. We're also providing a tailored onboarding plan using Copilot Studio. So those tasks are dropping in and they're very relevant to the new starter. And then finally, we've built an instant QA and chat bot, which provides information like where's the latest HR policy, when do I get paid.
So what I thought we'd do now is just have a bit of a chat around actually what does this all mean and how we can get started with this. Now, I suppose the first step of the journey is always going to be to identify some use cases and look at how we can adopt this. What would you sort of say to a business that was looking to start their AI journey? What would be the first step for them, Hugh?
So there's obviously so many different AI products that are available, from ChatGPT to Copilot. So really, you've got to start to make a strategy for how you're going to roll that out. I would suggest one of the best ways is a quick win is to start to use something like Copilot, where we can start to help users with their day-to-day productivity. So a Copilot for Microsoft 365 license can be purchased. And then what we do is we work with those users on a typical day-to-day, and we start to see how we could leverage Copilot to support and assist them with speeding up tasks. So save time creating presentations, use it as a coaching tool, which we mentioned on the previous presentation. We can obviously start to identify pilot cases within that group, and then we can start to roll it out to other departments and other users within those departments.
Yeah, so we have this phrase internally, don't we, of like ways of working. So rather than just kind of looking at generic stuff of, okay, a sales team could do this, a HR team could do this, we're quite big advocates of sitting down on a one-to-one basis and understanding the real ways of working of that team, and then designing the kind of the use cases around that. Another thing a lot of people are concerned about, or even has this phrase of AI anxiety, of so much change happening so quickly. And in the AI world, sometimes it's not even a matter of kind of years or months. Sometimes change is happening in a matter of weeks. What would you say people can do to kind of alleviate some of that anxiety?
A lot of the organizations that we're seeing aren't even getting started with AI. So it's that much of a scary product that they're not even jumping in and using the tools. And obviously, as it progresses and gets more advanced, they feel like they're being even more left behind. So I think the first thing that you do is you've just got to start utilizing some of these tools and getting familiar with them and figuring out how they work and what benefits they bring to you.
Yeah, definitely. And having that kind of transparent communication from the very beginning, I think, is vital. And really, there needs to be kind of a set of people internally that's kind of spearheading this and showing success stories and things like that. Because ultimately, businesses, their competitors are going to be using AI. It's going to come and steamroll and change a lot of things. So people really need to be kind of thinking about this first. One of the things that we often as well advocate for is like a champion or super user type of groups internally. One way to look at this is potentially having per department or per business unit, find someone who's the most technical. So think of it two ends of the kind of spectrum. Someone who's really sort of like into their tech, really loving sort of AI and things like that, and maybe show them things like Copilot and some of these other tools that we've discussed, and get them to find some use cases. But also, equally in the same department, find someone who's a completely opposite side, who doesn't like tech, is really fearful of change, doesn't like things, but get them into that kind of same champion group so that they can also learn from other people and find things that maybe they're concerned about, because all of this stuff then educates the wider kind of audience to say, well, these are the kind of cutting edge things we could be doing. These are things that people are maybe fearful of or scared to try. And you can create some educational materials, training courses, things like that to help alleviate some of those fears further down the line.
At Valta, we've implemented a couple of things like a Teams Quickfire for AI working group, and they share the latest things that they're doing, which is a great way of showcasing new things and new ideas. And we also have personal development time at the end of every month, and we use that time for people basically to spend Friday afternoon to go try new technology and figure new things out. And then at the end of that day, we share across some of our different groups what we've learned and how other people could use that.
100%. It's all part of this kind of continuous upskilling and supporting each other through this process. So at the end of the day, with a lot of the things that AI, as I say, because it's moving on so quickly, you really learn by doing. You do have to be kind of in there, using it, finding it, but then sharing that knowledge so that your colleagues don't have to go through the same journey to get that understanding. So if I learned something new, say, for example, there's a certain process that my team does, say, for example, it might be creating presentation pitch decks for our customers or something like that. If I've learned that and I've learned how to speed that up, it's then my responsibility to go to the wider team and say, hey guys, I know you are doing this as well, so let me show you this. Let me show you how we can take something that used to take a few hours down to sort of 10, 15 minutes. So those are the types of things that we would see. Also, having a kind of role-based learning paths as well. So as I say, documenting this down so that when you get new people joining your team, again, they don't have to go through the same learning all over again. If it's documented somewhere, potentially with playbooks or other forms of maybe video content of how to achieve these things, again, we can fast track some of that learning.
And that ties back to your ways of working as well, and making sure you've implemented the new tool sets as ways of working, and it's not isolated to one or two people who found a really cool way to do something, but actually you then roll that out across the whole company, and get everyone utilizing the same tools.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose then, just to sort of wrap up on this piece, how Valto actually enable this journey. So what does this actually look like from a starting point? So maybe Hugh, you could talk a little bit about the kind of discovery phase of how we approach that.
Yeah, so a lot of the first phase is not paid for at all with ourselves. We start off with a discovery phase. And I was chatting to one of our clients this morning, actually, in a similar position. They know that there's a lot of power with AI. Even their surveys are coming back and saying, we want to use AI, but they've been apprehensive at the moment about actually rolling those tools out. So we start off with that discovery phase, which initially starts perhaps with the key stakeholders or the senior leadership team. And it's showing them what AI can do and where we've got some other use cases in their sector and in their backgrounds. And that kind of starts to get the cogs turning. And then it kind of can lead to a tailored demo where we can go to the wider organization and we can say, hey, have you seen how we can use Copilot for Microsoft 365, or how Copilot Studio could work here, or other technologies along those lines?
Definitely. And in fact, if you're interested in having a session like that where we can talk about AI, there's a link in the description below where you can actually book a free consult and we can talk to you about AI examples that we've seen in your specific industry. Once we've gone through that discovery phase, we often will then move into the actual design stage, which is a workshop where we go through the full requirements gathering to understand your specific processes. We then obviously go into a kind of build, deploy phase, which has a full user acceptance journey, and a kind of testing, quality control stages, and we also offer support out the back of that. So as I say, Valto offer those kind of full journey from the very beginning to end, and Valto also have kind of proven customer transformation. So just talk a little bit about some stories that we've got. So we've seen across sort of manufacturing 30% faster quoting, legal 50% reduction in document review time, and retail things like forecasting and things like that using AI becoming 15% more accurate. So have you? What's your kind of favourite story that you've seen so far, Hugh?
I think the most powerful one applies to Valto. We've done a lot of work internally as part of our AI first strategy. So we basically created a working group, and as part of that working group, we set up a initial proof of concept. There's a lot of time that we spend doing the full life cycle of that project that we described, from discovery to workshop into low-level design to actually project delivery. So throughout that whole customer journey, there's a lot of producing documents, creating agendas, lots of man hours involved. So we've basically created some Copilot Studio that streamlines that whole process. So we did talk about it on our previous webinar, but basically it automatically creates agendas, which I'll show later on. It creates documents for workshop reports. It creates low-level design documents. It has a knowledge base of previous projects that we've done. So it just has this huge time saving and efficiency that meant we've saved hundreds of hours and actually improved our accuracy of forecasting of projects as well. It's been a win-win all round. From a customer's perspective, we're working on some really exciting projects around AI. For Copilot for Microsoft 365, we're working within the financial services. We're doing a huge rollout with them to roll out the licenses across their users and get them using personas and rolling that product out. So that's quite a good one as well. I don't know if you have any examples as well, Dougie.
Yeah, so I know that we do a lot of work in like a legal sort of sector. I know that there's been a large project recently where we were using AI to basically help determine things like there's a very large legal firm that we work with, and they're kind of like a group. They've got sub kind of areas, and there's certain things where they have to allocate costs and split costs between different things. And this was a very manual task. It took a lot of time from individuals in the business, but with AI layered over the top, it could determine and actually interpret very granular type of logic to work out which side of the business needs to be invoiced, what the commissions were, what the kind of the profit margins were, and things like that. So that was a fantastic example of how it's being used in the legal sector. And in the retail world as well, we've worked with a few different organisations to sort of help get better insights. One example recently was we were working with a particular race course which had basically loads of data, but they didn't really have a way of properly processing this, and they had gut feels on what insights potentially they might find. So, for example, they had this gut instinct that they would be selling more tickets at certain times of year, but they couldn't find the pattern to it. Once they've overlaid AI was actually able to marry up multiple different data sets. So not just their ticket sales and their general kind of demographics of who they're selling it to, but also things like weather data. So some insights came from that they could see actually they were selling tickets on days which were sunnier. So with better weather, they were actually getting better tickets. And that doesn't mean actually on the day of the races. This is weeks before. If there was better weather weeks before an event, they would sell more tickets. And they would only have got these types of insights using AI over the top of the data they currently have. So these are some fantastic examples. As I say, if you want to learn more about your specific industry and AI examples that people are using, there's a link in the description below that you can use to contact us. There's also some really useful downloads. So there's some download links in the description below, which basically will allow you to see some, as a high-level department examples of AI, and also why not take our AI readiness assessment, which basically is a little check sheet that you can work through to see maybe some areas that you've not yet considered before you actually start your AI journey, and that'll give you your own personalized score as well. As I say, if you have any other questions, you can reach out to us, book in your free 1-hour consultation using the link in the description below, and we'll be more than happy to talk to you about how AI can benefit your business. Thank you for watching.